Hello guys and welcome back to our countdown to Christmas. Today is the 10th of December, hope you're all doing well. And we've got another video where we're putting Necron units up against one another, comparing the units, looking at the advantages, disadvantages, and then making a decision which one we would select if we were to build a list around those units. Now yesterday we were talking about the Canoptic Scarabs going up against the Tomblaze, which was quite an interesting comparison. Both of them are very good at point scoring. So check that one out in the playlist if you've missed that. Also guys, before we get into today's video, I just want to get our sponsor in, which is the Magnet Baron. So if you're looking for some unique magnets for your Necrons, they've got flight stands for say your Doomsday Arks, your Ghost Arks. They've also got flight stands for your command barges and your Locust Heavy Destroyers. Anything that's got the fly keyword, they've got the flight stands which will pop off with the magnets so you're not going to break them while transporting them to your games. So that's the Magnet Baron. The link will be down in the description below. Check them out if you haven't already. Let's get on with today's video. Right, so into today's video, we've got two Transcendent Catan Shards going up against the Tesseract Bolt. So the Catan Shards are coming in at a total of 460 points for the two, whereas the Bolt is 400 points, so already it's advantage Tesseract Bolt. Now bear in mind guys, before getting into today's video, two Transcendent Catan Shards are from the Elite selections and they're also monster units, whereas the Tesseract Bolt is a Lord of War model, so you're going to need a super heavy auxiliary detachment or a super heavy detachment. It's also got the core keyword and it's also Titanic. So you will need one detachment for the Tesseract Bolt. In fact, you will need two detachments as a minimum for the Catan Shards because you can only have one Catan Shard per detachment. So yeah, you're going to need at least two detachments to take two Transcendent Catan Shards. Just want to make that clear in case there's any confusion in the comments. Right, datasheet to begin. How are we going to compare the datasheet? Looking at the stats to begin with. What do the Transcendent Catan Shards have that's better than the Bolt? First of all, weapon skill and the ballistic skill of a 2+, so they're hitting on 2s, whereas the Bolt hits on a 3+. In fact, they hit on a 6+ in melee, which it shouldn't really be in melee anyway. Not too concerned about that one. Now, the Bolt actually has 6 attacks, but don't forget, we've got two Transcendent Catan Shards here, so that would combine as a total of 10 attacks. As for the Tesseract Bolt, it's strength 8. Again, should be in melee. I'm not going to be too concerned about that. It's got 30 wounds as opposed to the combined total of 18 wounds with the Transcendent Catan Shards. And it's also got a 2+ armor save and not a 4+ armor save. So even though the Transcendent Catan Shards are hitting on a 2+, I think I would score that one to the Tesseract Bolt. Having a 2+ armor save, strength 8, 30 wounds. Hitting on a 3+ isn't so bad either with the core keyword. So yeah, I'm going to score that one to the Bolt. Ability wise, with the two Transcendent Catan Shards have the following. So they've got the Necrodermis ability, so they're only losing 3 wounds in a given phase. And also they have the 4+ invulnerable save, which is pretty nice. They've got the Fractured Personality ability, so you're either going to get 2 random abilities or you can select from one of them. You've got the option there, but they're all pretty decent, they're all pretty usable. We'll kind of talk about them in bits and bobs throughout the video. Then the third one, of course, is the powers of the Catan. Now both of these models are going to know 2 powers each, so 4 Catan powers as a combination for the two Transcendent Catan Shards. Now as for the Tesseract Bolt, first of all the Transtemporal Force Field, which is a 4+ invulnerable save. Doesn't have the Quantum Shield save, but it has the 4+ invulnerable save, which is still pretty decent, especially with a 2+ armor save anyway. It's also got the powers of the Catan Shards, and it's going to know between 1 and 3 powers, depending on what bracket it is on the table. Starting off with 3 powers, and it will go down slowly as it gets damaged. For that one, I'm definitely going to be picking the 2 Catan Shards, mainly because of the Fractured Personality ability. You get to customize what your Transcendent Catan Shard is going to be doing. Overall, they're going to know more Catan powers on top of that. So that one is a point to the Transcendent Catan Shards. On to Resiliency next. Well, the two Transcendent Catan Shards have a combined total of 18 wounds, which are toughness 7 on a 4+ armor save and a 4+ immun save. You've got options of boosting their resiliency even further with those Fractured Personality abilities, as we've already mentioned. One of them is immune to natural law, which is effectively transhuman physiology. You can't wound them on less than a 4+, which is pretty cool. Or alternatively, take the Sentient Necrodermis to give them a 3+ armor save as opposed to a 4+. And don't forget as well, Living Metal is really going to help with these Catan Shards. Now as for the Bolt, it's got 30 wounds, so there's a lot of wounds there, and they're all toughness 7 with 2+ armor save, a 4+ immun save. Even though I like the customization of the Transcendent Catan Shards, I think I'm going to be going with the Tesseract Bolt on this one. Having a 2+, 4+, 30 wounds, it's an absolute beast. Right, on to unique synergy. There's not much synergy, to be honest with you, with Catan Shards, but let's begin with the two Transcendent Catan Shards with the Entropic Strike stratagem, which allows them to ignore immun saves in melee. Pretty useful, especially because they're not too bad in melee. Now there is one piece of synergy, you're not going to use it, but I'm going to mention it in this video today because someone in the comments will mention it. It's Orokin the Diviner. He can give them a rerollable charge roll because effectively he's a Dynastic Agent Chronomancer, and his Master Chronometron ability is used on all Necron units as opposed to a Dynasty Necron unit. So that will include Catan shards. Now they don't need the invuln save because they've already got the 4+, but yeah, rerollable charge roll is doable. Now as for the Tesseract Bolt, Stellar Alignment Protocol, so you can always use your top bracket. If this thing is severely damaged, you're still going to be hitting on a 3+, which is not too bad. Curse of the Fair One to automatically explode, and the explosion is going to be pretty hefty. Its units within 2d6 are going to suffer d6 mortal wounds. Now it is a 4+ explosion anyway, but if you wanted to spend CP to automatically do that, you can. And the third option is the Malevolent Arcing stratagem to do mortal wounds with the Tesla weapons it takes. Now in fact there is some further synergy with the Canoptic Spider, with the Fabricator Claw Array. So this is a vehicle of course, so you can be healing this vehicle D3 lost wounds every time as long as it's got the same dynasty code, and the same applies to a Technomancer with the Canoptic Cloak. You can also be healing D3 lost wounds to your Vault. You've then got the Triarch Stalk with the Targeting Relay to be assisting your Vault with the Tesla Spheres again, re-rolling hit rolls of a 1 at a targeted unit, and finally a Necron Overlord with the My Will Be Done ability as well as the Relentless March Aura. So for me there's a lot more synergy of course with the Tesseract Bolts, mainly because it's a core unit but also because it's got the Dynasty keyword. So there's going to be a lot more synergy. So yeah, that one's an easy point to the Vault. Okay, on to damage output. Starting off with the 2 Transcendent Catan shards, they've got the Crackling Tendrils, which is a melee weapon. Now these are strength 6, -4 OP, d6 damage. Now they've only got 5 attacks each, but with the Fractured Personality you could select the Untamed Power. So the strength of these weapons can go from strength 6 to strength 7, which then makes it really useful against light vehicle models such as toughness 6, toughness 7 kind of things. The damage is a little bit iffy though, damage d6. Yeah, I'm not a fan of d6 as you know, but yeah, you can do a little bit of work with these. Not as good as a Nightbringer, but yeah, can still do some damage. But to be honest with you, the main bulk of the damage that comes from the Catan shards is from their Catan powers and the mortal wounds as well, so it's going to be a lot harder for your opponent to actually ignore them. Let's get on to the Tesseract Bolts with the Tesla Spheres. There's 4 Tesla Spheres with this vehicle. All of them are going to be 24-inch range, assault 4, strength 7, no AP 1 damage, and 6 explode into more hits. Now to be honest with you, this weapon isn't doing a lot at all really. It's light infantry killing at best. Maybe it's killing some Termagants with a low armor save, but yeah, going up against power armor and things like that, it's not going to do anything. So this one's already an easy win for the Catan shards, and I didn't even need to go into too much detail with Catan powers. Overall purposes for both of these units, starting off with the 2 Catan shards, the mortal wound output, especially from those Catan powers, you've got your 6 to select from the list. Antimatter Meteor is one of the good ones, Sky of Falling Stars is also a pretty good one. Some of them are trashy, but you don't need to select them of course. So yeah, the mortal wound output is pretty good, and also you want them in melee, not just to dish out damage, but also to protect them from range attacks. If they're in melee and your opponent doesn't want to fall back, they can't be targeted at range. And finally, they're just going to be a huge distraction. Your opponent is going to need to get rid of them because of the amount of mortal wounds they're throwing out. So they're going to be a huge distraction, especially early game. As for the Vault, well, it's a super tank heavy unit, isn't it? It's got 30 wounds, 2+, 4+. It's going to be tanking a hell of a lot of shots. It's going to be dominating the board because the sheer size of this thing is huge. And it's also going to be dishing out mortal wounds in the same way that the Catan shards do with the Catan powers. In fact, the Catan powers are much more potent with the Vault. And just as an example, I read one out for you, the Sky of Falling Stars. With the Transcendent Catan shards, it's D3 mortal wounds when it goes off, but with the Tesseract Bolt, it's just a flat 3. So each one of the powers is slightly increased when you've got the Vault, as opposed to the Catan shards. And finally, a slight bit of anti-infantry weapons to maybe assist, not doing much, but yeah, going up against certain factions, those weapons aren't too bad. Right, advantages and disadvantages for the 2 Transcendent Catan shards. So they are great in melee, they're only losing 3 wounds in a given phase with the Necrodermis ability. Now I would put here the 4+ invulnerable save, but these are advantages against the Tesseract Bolt, and the Vault actually has a 4+ as well, so I don't need to mention that here. There's 2 complete separate models, so that's going to be 2 completely separate locations throwing out Catan powers. They're hitting on a 2+ with their weapon skill. They've got the custom Fractured Personalities ability, which I really like. They're going to be a huge distraction, especially early on. So that's going to keep other units such as Necron Warriors, maybe your Silent King, it's going to keep them up and running a lot longer. They've also got a smaller base size, so it makes them be able to move around the board much quicker and much easier, because that Tesseract Bolt is a bit of an animal when moving it around the tabletop. And finally, the stratagems are much cheaper because these models are not Titanic models. You'll notice in the stratagem section, for Titanic models, some of them are quite a big leap from 1 CP to 3 CP just because of the Titanic keyword. That's the advantages. As for disadvantages, 2 models are costing 60 points more than the Tesseract Bolt, so you've lost 60 points right there. There's less overall wounds, a total of 18 wounds as opposed to 30. They've got the 4+ armor save, not a 2+. They're offering nothing in the shooting phase. Okay, they've got the powers, but I'm talking about purely the shooting phase here with ranged weapons. They're not core, so the synergy is pretty poor in fact. Apart from Orican the Diviner, which, yeah, nobody's taking him, right? And finally, that character keyword. I've not mentioned this in this video yet. The character keyword is not helpful for the Transcendent Catan shards. They can't take warlord traits, they can't take relics, yet they are still characters, so if your opponent selects assassination, for example, for their secondaries, these are going to be gifting your opponent some points. So that's Transcendent Catan shard summed up. What about the Tesseract bolt's advantages? Starting off with the fact that it's a core model because it's a vehicle, so it's going to be synergizing with virtually the entire codex. They've got more wounds with 30 wounds with a 2+ armor save. The Catan powers are much more potent, as mentioned earlier. They've got a shooting phase because of those Tesla spheres. They might not be the best, but it's still more than what the Transcendent Catan shards have. They are 60 points cheaper to field, going up against those 2 Transcendent Catan shards. And finally, it's a Titanic model, which allows it to fall back and still fire if you wanted to. That's the advantages. Disadvantages, well, stratagems cost more. Some of them are 3 command points which you're just not going to use. They're offering very little in melee. I mean, yes, it is strength 8 with 6 attacks, but you're hitting on a 6+. You're not going to be getting much done in melee with the Tesseract bolts. It's got a damage table, so it will be bracketed, and it's the movement, the ballistic skill, and the attacks that actually does get bracketed. To be honest with you, you would argue that none of these are important. The ballistic skill, yeah, the Tesla spheres aren't doing much. The attacks, none, who cares about that? And the movement, maybe it's important, maybe it's not, but really it's there for the Catan powers, isn't it? What are the disadvantages we got? No dynasty codes. If you're taking an auxiliary detachment, you cannot select from your dynasty code, so you're not gaining the Mephit dynasty or objective secured. You need to take a super heavy detachment, which is 3 Lord of War models. So this is really going to be saved for your bigger games, because you're not going to get that in an incursion game, or even a 1,500 point game. You're going to really struggle with 3 Lord of War models. It's difficult to move this thing around the board because of the sheer size of it. It's hitting on a 3+, which is still good, but it's not a 2+ like the other Catan shards. It's 1 model versus 2, so it's only in one single location at a given time. And finally, the Tesla spheres are just a bit so-so. Okay, so it's that part of the video where I've got to make a decision. Which of these units would I select from and why? I think for today's video, I'm going to be going with the 2 Transcendent Catan shards. I think they're just going to be offering so much more, not only just for the Catan powers, but also in the fight phase they're doing a bit of work, whereas the Tesseract Bolt, the shooting phase, not doing so much, the fight phase, not doing so much. So for me, I'm going to be going with the 2 Transcendent Catan shards. So guys, let me know down in the comments which one you would be selecting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, of course, to be in with a chance of winning this from our giveaway. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.